All right, the different types of designers, going into those a little bit more. First, we have the scenic designer. So the scenic designer is responsible for the set, which can vary from a bare stage to extremely elaborate, just like you saw with that one scenic design that was mostly a bare stage, but just had really plain stick-built house, right? It can be that. It can be totally bare. It can be extremely elaborate, with a whole house that flies on, and the insides of a house, etc. So there's a huge variation, and it all depends on what the show needs and what type of style the show is. All right, they have collaborators. So these are all different jobs that you can have in the theater. So the technical director oversees the construction of the set and the scene shop. So they're like the manager that makes sure that everything goes smoothly on the technical scenery end, and can also oversee other parts of the production process as well, like making sure that things are going well in the lighting shop and the paint shop. The scenic designer will also have carpenters. So the technical director will be the one that hires the carpenters. So the carpenters will work under the technical director, or the TD is what we call them. So carpenters are, just as you would think, the people that build the set. And then so the scenic designer, sorry, we'll go back a little bit. The scenic designer draws out these beautiful scenic renderings or scenic plans and gives them to the TD. The TD will draft them, which means that, if you've seen like blueprints of houses, the TD will make these technical drawings or drafts of what the set pieces will look like, the walls and the doors and the windows, all of that. Oh no, don't touch your face. Woo. Um, and then they will show the carpenters, and the carpenters will read it and they will build it just as it's been laid out for them in the technical drawings and the plans, ground plans. And then after the carpenters have built it, they'll send it off to the scenic painters, who will then look at a rendering that the scenic designer has done, or a paint elevation is what they'll call it. So the scenic designer will draw what every wall or every backdrop might look like. They'll paint it, like a paint. They'll make a painting of what they want the backdrop to look like, for instance. And the scenic painters will take that and interpret it and blow it up real big. Not physically, they'll just take that painting, and they'll make it bigger on top of the backdrop or on top of the walls or whatever it may be. So that's kind of the order of things with the scenic design. The costume designer, that's me. So the costume designer is the person responsible for creating costumes for the performers. So they will begin with a thorough knowledge of the play. So will all these designers. They'll read it, they'll know the subject matter, the period, the style, the point of view, and they'll intimately understand the characters. The costume designer is more involved with the characters than any of the other designers are. They have to really get into their psyche to know, what would this character specifically have put on today and why? Why did they have this in their closet in the first place? And what was their mood or what was going on that made them pick out this outfit? Some of their collaborators, people that specialize in hair, wigs, masks, and makeup. So they may have specific mask designers and makeup designers, or it could just be people that are applying the wigs and masks and makeup and prosthetics. In a costume shop, there will be drapers, tailors, and stitchers. So these are the people that actually make the costumes, right? So the costume designer doesn't make the things. They draw their renderings just like the scenic designer does, and they give it to a shop foreman or a costume shop manager, and the costume shop manager will dole out assignments to everybody that works in the costume shop. So those drapers are people that, like in this image right here, even though she kind of looks like she's feeling up the mannequin, I don't think that's meant to be what she's doing. I think she's just draping. So you just take fabric and you drape it on the mannequin, or the dress form is what we'll call it in the theater, in costumes, and you make the pattern that way. You look at the costume designer's rendering and you create the pattern for the costume on the dress form organically by draping it. Tailors, this gentleman over here is a tailor, is someone that starts with a pattern. Instead of draping from scratch, they'll start with a piece of paper and they will draft a pattern to fit, to make a costume that looks like the designer wants it. And then the stitchers are the people that actually physically sew it all together. And then wardrobe is super important. So a designer designs it, it gets sewn by the people in the costume shop, and then when it's time to go to stage, it gets handed over to the wardrobe people. So they maintain the costumes during the show. They help dress the performers. They do quick changes. So if the performer needs to go from one outfit to another outfit in 15 seconds, the wardrobe people are going to be there and they're going to do it for them. And then once the show opens, the designer can move on to their next job. But the wardrobe are the ones that make sure that the costumes stay in pristine condition and that they get worn the way that the director or that the costume designer wanted them to be worn. The lighting designer, so they know how to make the best use of the medium of light, which not a good lighting designer, but they can create all kinds of effects with things like gels, which are different colored, like almost like cellophane that you put in front of a light to make it shine in a different color. You can have gobos, which are cut out pieces of metal that create different shapes with the light. We need lighting. Even if you don't use mood lighting like that, you can't see the actors on stage if you don't have lights to illuminate them, right? So at the very, very minimum, we need lights to make everything visible to the audience. But they can also be really, really powerful with their evoking mood and feeling. So they will drop a light plot, just like other designers might do renderings or drafts. They will make their light plot, which is basically a drafting of where everything's going to be hung. The ME or master electrician and the lighting crew will hang all the lights according to the plot. So they've got an ME and you've got electricians, and they're going to plug everything up and hang everything in the rafters or in the beams or in the fly system to make it go exactly where it needs to go. Then when the show starts, just like you have wardrobe crew to help during the show with the costumes, you need a board op or a board operator, light board operator, that's going to sit there and click the buttons and do all the controls to bring lights up and bring lights down and make lights turn on and off on stage. And then you also need a spot op, which anytime you've seen a musical with a spotlight shining directly on someone, a marvelous Mrs. Maisel, you can see it. That's a spotlight operator or spot op using a follow spot. And there has to be someone there physically to operate it. We also got deck electricians or deck elects. We've got all kinds of shorthand for things in the theater. In sound design, it becomes increasingly important as technology gets better and better. So they'll read the script is what they start with, just like all designers start with that. And they'll note any requirements in the play, like if there needs to be a loud booming voice of God that echoes and reverberates throughout the theater. That's the sound designer's job to figure out how to do that. And then they also need to ask the director if they have any requests, if the director needs any sound modulation or anybody to be amplified more than anybody else, or some Foley sounds, which are like, footsteps that happen live. Then the sound designer must figure out how to meet the needs of the production with regards to sound. So they're going to be like, okay, we need this, this, and this. How are we going to do it? Are we going to do it live? Are we going to do it recorded? Am I going to pull just sound effects off of the internet? Right? These are all options that the sound designer will figure out. They work with a sound engineer. So the sound engineer will figure out how to do what the sound designer wants to do. So that means that they've got to figure out where the placement of the speakers need to be most effective, so that the audience can hear it and so that the actors can hear themselves if they need to hear themselves. What the best acoustics are going to be for the building or the room that they're in if they need to change the acoustics in any way. They need to install things, test things, etc. The person that runs the show, just like we've got wardrobe and we've got deck electricians and spot ops, for sound, it's going to be the mixer. So the mixer is the one that's there at the soundboard, making sure that everyone's levels are good, making sure that if it's a musical, the actors can be heard, the singers can be heard above the orchestra, and that the band isn't too loud, because then we can't understand what the words are, but they also want to make sure that that everything is mixing well, that the piano isn't louder than the guitar, et cetera, et cetera. So they're live mixing during the show, making sure that the balance is right. All right, so now we've got several discussion questions. I'm going to put an assignment with this module for you to answer one of these questions. Choose one. answer it, submit it. It won't be public. It's just being sent to me. Um, and thanks for tuning in. Again, post a comment if you have any questions, or just email me directly or send me a message on Canvas. Any of these things is fine. I hope you're all doing well. I know this is weird and crazy for all of us, but I appreciate you tuning in and joining me for the ride. Next class, we will be doing a live version of this on Zoom. So I hope you can join me then. If you can't, that's okay. It will be fun, but I understand there are lots of different family obligations out there. So just make sure to catch the recorded version once it's done. All right. Thanks again.